Okay, welcome to another episode of Your Next Best Step with me, Theresa Cantley. I am super excited for my guest today. I am super excited to be interviewing Paul Davis. Welcome, Paul, and have him on the show today. So this is going to be a very interesting conversation. Paul is over in Ireland, in Dublin. So it'll be interesting to hear how things are in Dublin versus here in the United States and all of the above. So this is going to be a super, super exciting show. We do have something in common. We both have rescue dogs.
Okay. Yeah, very
Yeah.
good. I didn't know that, I have to say. Yeah.
Yeah. So I actually have two. We rescued them last year during the pandemic. So yeah, so we'll chat about that. So welcome. I'm excited to have you.
It's absolutely great to be here. I'm delighted to be here, Teresa. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. Wonderful. You've got so many interesting things, and I can in your bio and your story, and I can see you have planes in the back. So we're going to chat about that because that's a huge part of what you do, who you are, and part of your story. So before we get started, I'm just going to read your bio so everybody knows who you are. Paul Davis is an intuitive advisor that specializes in guiding you to your life's purpose and supporting people to build a business around their purpose so they can reach their full potential. So let's get started. So let's talk about the planes.
Okay. Planes have featured in trip all my life, in fact. So when I was a kid growing up, what I wanted to do as a career was I wanted to be a pilot. But back then, because I'm quite old now at this age, so back then
No.
you weren't allowed to wear glasses, as in corrective lenses, in order to be a commercial pilot. So when I got my first pair of lenses at the age of somewhere between the age of 10 and 12, that was that dream completely dashed from my perspective. But it has still featured throughout all my life. So it was my first career, but one of the careers that I went into was involved in refurbishing aircraft engines.
Mm.
So if you take the aircraft engine that you normally see on a 747 or a 737, so Pratt & Whitney engines and CFM engines and so on, the plant was responsible for refurbishing those engines. So we'd take them in and we'd refurbish them and send them back out onto the aircraft. So that was my first, I suppose, exposure to aircraft.
Wow.
But I always had a desire to try different experiences from a flight perspective. So I've learned how to fly. I've flown in a helicopter, small aircraft. I've done a glider. I've jumped out of an airplane twice. I have to say, with a parachute, I have to say. I've done hot air balloon. I've done loads of different, as I would say, I've probably done every flying experience. And I'm at the moment, pre-COVID, I was trying to plan for my 20th anniversary in my own business to do a wing walk.
A wing
So
walk. A wing walk where you're walking on the wing of a plane?
in effect, well, yeah, in effect, but you're strapped in. So if you can imagine a biplane, so biplane where you got the two wings and one on top of each other, and you're strapped into a harness on the top side of the wing, and then the pilot does aerobatics while you're in the air.
Oh
So,
my God.
so I do a few little mad things like that. But even from a client perspective, and I still have, so even in my community, I have a pilot. And in clients of pilots are attached to the aviation industry. So it's featured pretty much right throughout my whole life. It's one of my passions, and I do make the distinction between, when people talk about purpose, they say, follow your purpose or find your passion, then you find your purpose, but it's actually incorrect. So, but it is one of my passions. Yeah.
So let's talk about, because you just brought it up. Let's talk about when people want to, because I know that I struggled with this when I first started my business, and I have this like massive light coming in all of a sudden. I think it's my best friend who just passed away. But so I know this was something that I struggled with is, when I first started my business, and even before, because my first business was a brick and mortar store, is
Mm,
that idea of finding your purpose. Because as
mm,
entrepreneurs, that is something where it's like, you're dealing with so many hurdles and so many ups and downs. And, sometimes you're questioning, like, is this really my purpose? So
yeah.
how do you talk to people about, because that's a big thing that you do, is, where do you start to find your purpose, and how do you do it?
Okay, cool. Well, you don't do what everybody else tells you to do. That's one thing. So let me explain that. So I originally started off as an accountant. That's what I qualified as. Okay. And a lot of my career and my business would have been helping to grow and scale businesses. So I've been in all different industry sectors. So manufacturing, construction, retail, professional services, right across the board. But part of the work that I used to do with clients, and part of this growing up as a kid, was that I just thought everybody else could do what I did, being an intuitive. So when I came into my career and came into my businesses that I was running, I was guiding my clients and giving them the right path that they should go on, and that would result in massive, massive success for them and give them huge fulfillment in what it is that they were to do. And part of it again was me from a perspective of, because nobody ever really told me. I just understood, well, everybody else can do this. And one of my own inner desires was for that sense of purpose for myself, from the perspective of I was trying to find my purpose. And it wasn't until I had literally a huge epiphany from the perspective of, Paul, well, my purpose is actually putting other people on their purpose. So since then, and that epiphany, I've literally turned everything around from the perspective of, I used to go out to the world and marketing side of things of, I'd help you get more clients. I'd help you to increase your fees. I'd help you to manage your time more effectively. I'd help you to grow your business in effect. But now it's the other way around. So look, no, I help you find your purpose, and then I structure the business around that. Now, what a lot of people talk about when they come to talk about purpose is they talk about, okay, you've got to find meaning in your life. And most people that are in the search for purpose, they refer to Viktor Frankl. And Viktor Frankl is the person that
Mm,
survived concentration camp. And one of the most famous books was Man's Search for Meaning.
wonderful book.
It absolutely is. But when it comes to finding your own personal purpose, what ultimately people are trying to find out is, what are they to do? And if you read the book, it will guide you along the lines of, well, the purpose of life, or the purpose of anything, is you give it meaning. So therefore, in effect, you could look at it from the perspective of, well, if I give sufficient meaning to something, well, then now I have personal meaning. And it's true to a sense, but it still doesn't answer the question for a lot of people in terms of, what's my purpose? What am I to do? And people also referring, again, so it's in books, it's online, and so on. And they say, well, you've got to find your passion. If you find your passion, well, then turn your passion into your business, and now you've found your purpose. But it's actually wrong. It's completely incorrect.
Mm,
Passion follows purpose. So the more you're actually on your purpose, the more your passion increases. So I'm passionate about an awful lot of things. So as you said, Theresa, in terms of, I love trying every single different type of flight experiences. Um, that's something I'm passionate about. It's transitional. It's nothing whatsoever got to do with my purpose. Absolutely nowhere near what my purpose is. And that's what I've seen in all the clients I've worked with. And again, other people come back to say, well, you've got to find your why. And if you find your why, well, then now you've found your purpose. But here's the thing. If you find your why, you're consciously trying to work it out, meaning you're using your conscious mind to try and work out what
mm,
your purpose is. You'll never, ever, ever get your true purpose by working it out consciously. Hence the reason
mm,
why I work intuitively. So and then on top of that, people are trying to apply a why to what they're doing based on what they're currently doing right now at the moment. So whether it's a business or whether it's a career or whatever they're doing, they're trying to find, well, why do I do what I'm doing? But actually what they're doing right now at the moment may not actually be their purpose. So therefore they'll never get the right why for them. Everything works on an unconscious level. So when you're able to tap into, for one in one respect, when you're able to tap into your unconscious side of things, now you can try and find you can actually find your true purpose. So when I'm working with clients, I'm working on, there's 4 elements that I find for my clients, which is what are they to do, why are they to do it, how are they to do it, and what's going to give them the joy, passion, and fulfillment. So that's the 4 elements, and I call it the genius you. That's in effect what makes up the genius you. So what people, unfortunately, they're like what you referred to, Theresa, where you're searching online, you're reading loads of books, and you're trying to find what that purpose is. Because of the information that's out there, it's actually incorrect, and it's misleading. It's not completely incorrect, but it's just very, very misleading. So the knowings that I used to get as a kid and throughout my whole life for people, as I was engaging with them and working with them, I'd get images, I'd get knowings, I'd get insights, I'd get, what impacted her to make it and so on. What I had to do over the years was to develop, and this is the accountant in me, is I had to develop a methodology in order to work out, well, okay, how can I guide my clients in order to find that unconscious information that shows up in their life, that shows them and then gives them the evidence that matches the images and the knowings and the insights that I get from my clients. So now I work on both levels, if that makes sense. So I bring them through a methodology. So now, because one of the things I used to get, and again, many accountants, or I don't think I've actually never come across any other accountant that would express themselves as being intuitive.
No, so, I don't think I've ever either.
So, and people's view of intuition or being an intuitive is, oh, it's a bit woo-woo, or it's a bit out there, or, one thing that I'd regularly get back from people was, oh, you're just making this up. So I took all of that on board and I said, okay, look, I've got to find a system, a process, a methodology in order to actually substantiate what it is that I'm seeing or picking up or knowings for my clients. And therefore, if my clients can see the evidence in their life and I can show it to them, now it's them accepting. Now they have so much evidence in their life to say, actually, no, I'm not making it up. And it makes complete, perfect sense to them. And then immediately, I'm not joking, immediately as soon as I give somebody we discover what their purpose is, immediately what shows up is, how on earth am I to do that? They get overwhelmed and they say, well, who am I to do that? Where do I even start? So it's funny how the brain operates, because they've spent years searching for the life purpose. And then as soon as they get it, within literally, I'm not joking, within 5 minutes, they're into, okay, how can we make that happen? And then that's all the fear starts to come up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's literally the process of what I bring my clients through.
So you said something interesting. So, and I know this to be true for myself, is that, and you're an NLP practitioner, right? Yeah. Okay. So I know that we said a couple things. So first of all, if we can go back for a minute to the Viktor Frankl, I mean, and like I said, it's a great book. I've read it several times. But things only have meaning when we attach meaning to it. They really don't have meaning, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And the only meaning that it has is the meaning that we give it. So, and he talks a lot about that with how he got through his circumstances, because he used his mind to say, okay, this is what I'm, how I'm going to do this, or this is what I'm going to think about. And was really able to use that to survive pretty much. And I know one time my mentor said that should be a book that every entrepreneur reads, because it really it's just so powerful to say, like, I'm not going to look at my circumstance and put meaning on it that, this is never going to happen. This is negative. This is, whatever. I'm going to look at what's happening and say, okay, like, I'm going to attach a different meaning to it so I can get a different outcome. So along with that, as you said, because I know many, many people have said to me, like, when I've struggled in my business, just go back to your why. And you're like, oh my God.
Seriously, do I have to?
Yeah. You're like, oh my Lord, be quiet. Like, what? because, okay, go back to your why. Then what do you do? But you said something very interesting that goes along with that meaning is so many of us are using our conscious mind to find to find their why, to find their purpose. But when you have to use that unconscious mind, that part of our brain, because I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the conscious mind is like that reptilian part of your brain, that the old part. And then the unconscious mind is that part that we very rarely tap into. So how can people, when you're walking through finding your purpose with one of your clients, how do you do that, tapping into your unconscious mind to really uncover what their purpose is?
Brilliant. So what I do is I go through a series of questions and I keep drilling down all of those questions. And when I'm going through the questions, they're now able to see the evidence in their life. And it's that evidence that is the evidence from their unconscious.
Wow.
So when you go through and you ask very, very specific questions, and then because I'm working on an intuitive level, I'm guiding to make sure that the answers that they get to the questions, so that this is where I need to drill down a little bit further with them to make sure that they really, really get the information. So when you ask, let me just wait, there's a phrase that I came across many years ago, and that was along the lines of, the quality of your life is the quality of the questions you ask. It was along those lines. So if you ask really, really powerful questions, well, then there's so much that you can get from the answers. So what I do is literally bringing my clients through those questions. And then from those questions, it's them coming up with the answers, but they're seeing the evidence in their life in order to give them the answers.
Wow.
And bring all of that together now to say, well, okay, now it's like putting all the pieces of a jigsaw together. It now all makes sense. Whereas before, so if you, and again, I refer to as breadcrumbs. So do you remember the fairy tale Hansel and Gretel? And what the little kids did in order to find a way back home was they went into the forest, but they brought breadcrumbs with them. And they would drop the breadcrumbs, and the whole purpose of the breadcrumbs to leave a trail was to find a way back home. Our unconscious leaves breadcrumbs throughout our whole life. And the whole purpose is for us to find our way back home.
Oh, wow.
So when you find your way back home, which is your true purpose, the true you, the you that you are to become, the you that you're to be, that's home. And I want to make just a slight distinction of what you said earlier on, in the sense of when you truly know who you are, and because you're talking there in relation to businesses and when fear comes up and so on, when you get to absolutely know who you truly are, now you can detach yourself from what you're experiencing. Because that's the unconscious part of you. And when you can detach yourself from what you're experiencing, but you don't want to remove the fear and the evidence that shows up in your life. So if you've got clients that are going through difficulty, especially over the last couple of years through the pandemic, when they've gone through difficulty and they're trying to solve their problems, they're trying to solve it from their conscious perspective. Fear shows up, but fear is there as a signpost to say that you're attached to something. Fear is feedback. And I know the acronym is out there for many, many years saying, it's what? False evidence appearing real. I hate that saying. There's a lot of things I debunk. Smart goals I debunk. Why? Find your why I debunk. And the reason, when you really, really look at it and understand it and come from a different angle, and what I mean by come from a different angle is, don't just take on whatever somebody else says. So even listeners, or even yourself, Theresa, or anybody listening to this podcast, don't even believe anything I'm saying. Don't. It's my view based on my experiences and what I brought my clients through. And the difference, phenomenal difference, is made for them. But it's only by asking questions and not taking what somebody else says in terms of what people say to find your purpose. So I've been on kind of like, how would you say, that trail to find my own purpose. But it wasn't until I actually stood back and said, actually, you know what, I'm going to find this for myself and forget about all the other stuff that's out there. And it wasn't until I took that point and said, that's when I said, actually, no, a lot of stuff that I was coming across was incorrect or was misleading. It was bringing me down rabbit holes that I didn't need to go down. And unfortunately, for an awful lot of people, that's what they end up doing. They end up going down rabbit holes.
Totally, totally. Because I mean, you're right. I mean, there's so much stuff out there, and I know I was one of those people when I was still in corporate and I was trying to get my first business going. I read everything and I tried to do everything that everybody was telling me, and I was like, "Why isn't this working?"
Yeah, yeah.
But you're right. You're right. I mean, you have to. And one of my mentor now has always said to me, read things, listen to things, learn from things. And he actually has me keep a notebook next to, whatever I'm doing or take it with me. And he said, write down, I agree with this point,
Yeah.
and here's why, or I don't agree with this point, and here's what I think differently. So that it's going along with what you're saying. Like, I'm not just like following exactly what someone's saying, but listening to it and saying, oh, yes, I agree. And I'm going to do this, or no, I don't. And I think this way's better.
Yeah.
So, that's fascinating. So I have a question for you. So what could people, like, what are some questions that, people could start asking themselves? Like,
Okay.
without
Yeah.
your expert guidance.
Okay. Let me ask you, and by inference, the listeners can ask themselves.
Sure.
Okay. Do you want to find your true why?
What was
You.
that? Do I want to find my true why?
Yeah, your true why. I mean, your true unconscious why.
Yes.
Okay. So what I want you to do is think back to a movie that you watched, or a video, or a book that you read, or a program that you were watching. And by watching that video or that movie, you had an overwhelming response of emotion to what you're watching at a particular part or time or moment in that movie. And I'm not talking about the kind of movies that you watch that are normally featured towards being a tearjerker. No, I'm talking about the moment that you can find in your life where you've watched a movie, and if you're around people, you'll want to suppress those emotions. You won't want anybody else to know that you're actually being overwhelmed emotionally. And when you find and remember and recall those movies, or it could be a piece of music, when you recall those and you're trying to find, okay, what was the moment in that movie that you got that overwhelming response? And decipher it and analyze it. And even if there's more movies that you can find that had a very similar overwhelming response, now you've found your true why. And here's the thing. When you were watching the movie or reading the book or listening to that piece of music, you were not controlling those emotions. You were trying to suppress them, but your unconscious was expressing itself. It was welling up inside in order for you to have that overwhelming response. That's the unconscious saying to you, or trying to communicate to you, that's my why. That's why I want to do what it is that I want to do. That's your true why. You'll never, ever, ever will find that if you're trying to find it out from a conscious perspective. By looking for the evidence, and what I mean by looking for the evidence is that's evidence. And every single individual can remember moments when they've been watching a movie or listened to a piece of music where they've had that it's literally, it's how would I say, it's instantaneous. The overwhelming reaction just happens. You didn't bring it on, it literally just happened. And when I work with clients, they can actually, when I bring it down with them, they can actually pinpoint it to one particular sentence or one lyric in a song, or one literally, it can be a scene in a movie that can literally only last for less than a minute. And it's that movie, it's that scene in that movie that literally they can get that overwhelming response. And every time they reflect back on it, they can get that overwhelming response back.
Wow.
That's your true why.
I was, when you were saying that, I was thinking there's a song by India Irie, and it says, what didn't demolish me, polished me. Like that was a phrase that came up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And here's the thing, every single client, and this, it feeds into everything that I do anyway, but every single client that I've worked with, first of all, your purpose is unique to you, completely, totally, and utterly unique to you. Every single individual has a unique purpose. And every single individual that I've worked with has a completely different why, meaning they have a different movie or a lyric in a song. Like I've never heard the one that you refer to.
Mhm.
So every single individual has a complete unique why.
Wow. That's fascinating. And, you know, you going through that short exercise, like I can see where myself, like I always defined my why and thought that what I was supposed to do. And I was always basing it on someone, like what someone else was doing, not
Yeah,
necessarily tapping into myself and saying, okay, this is really what I like, this is my own.
yeah,
But now, I mean, now that we walk through that, I can see for myself that what I've been doing, I mean, I teach people how to build resilient businesses. And a lot of that is based on falling down and getting back up and falling down and getting back up. You know, what didn't demolish me, polish me, and help me
exactly.
to be like who I am today.
Yeah.
So, but that's fascinating because when you do walk through that exercise, you don't feel it here, you feel
No,
it here.
it's in your
Yeah.
heart. Yeah.
Yeah.
And for people to really kind of understand that, most people can connect with. So when they talk about intuitive, most people don't get it. But if you were to reflect back over, did you ever have a moment in your life that you had that gut feeling
Mm.
that you're about to do something, but just it didn't feel right? And the only description you can put on it is it just didn't feel right.
Mhm.
That, and people sometimes will refer to it as being their gut feeling. That's your unconscious. So you can't control that. It's that feeling inside that wells up inside and is trying to absolutely guide you and every single individual throughout their whole life. We just don't listen to our unconscious. But when you're able to kind of work with it and understand it and know it, well, then now life becomes so much more easier. And when I talk to people about, having an effortless life, that's when you're working with your unconscious.
Mm.
So that for people to really connect from the perspective of to know what that feeling is like, it's like having that gut feeling. It wells up inside. And as you said, Theresa, it's not in your mind because that's your conscious. So it's not in your thinking process. It's a feeling that you get inside, and you can't. Not that you as such can't create it, but you cannot consciously create that feeling.
No, no, that's true. I mean, no matter how hard you try, it just doesn't,
No.
you just can't. Yeah. I mean, I know people that like when I talk, like, oh yeah, I feel good about this. I'm like, no, you don't. No, I do. Really, I do. I'm feeling, no, you don't.
Yeah, exactly,
Because you can
exactly.
kind of see it, it reflects in your whole body.
Yeah.
Um, so I got a question for you because you mentioned something, and it's something that I know I've asked myself a lot is how do you tell the difference between fear, like I've had to overcome, which I know a lot of people do, but I've had to overcome fear of rejection, like
Yeah.
big time throughout my career, throughout my life, really.
Yeah.
And how can you tell the difference between a fear, like when as an entrepreneur, when you're wanting to put something out there or you're wanting to do something, how can you tell the difference between that fear of rejection and that's why you're not doing it, and your unconscious mind that's saying that's not the right way to go, that's like your intuition saying
Yeah.
that's not the right thing. How can you
Yeah.
tell the difference between the two?
The more, how would I say, the more sensitive you become, the easier it is to discern between whether this is you yourself, your personality creating the fear, or whether it is your unconscious actually trying to guide you. So a lot of people don't actually, how to say, they don't they don't make that connection as clean, or they don't work on making that connection. So let me explain that. When I work with clients, I'm bringing them through a methodology, and it's a methodology that I call the executive code.
Ah,
Now,
I was going to get to that.
okay. No, but what I mean by that is that, so to really kind of get an idea or a conceptual idea of the executive code, think of it that you've got a pendulum. So you can imagine a pendulum in front of you, and at the very top of the pendulum, you've got a circle. And then halfway down that pendulum, you've got another circle. And then lower at the end of the pendulum, you've got another circle. So each of those circles represents one thing, as in each circle represents a different thing. So the top circle, think of it as being your executive center. So that's the executive center is in your prefrontal cortex. It's behind your forehead. Okay. Mm-hmm. Now, as you said earlier on, the vast majority of people aren't operating from the executive center part of the brain. But executive center part of the brain, its whole purpose is to get you from A to Z as quickly as possible. It's objective, it's innovative, it's creative, its responsibility is to plan, and how it can get you, literally how it can get you from A to Z as quickly as possible using the least amount of resources. Okay, that's what its purpose is. So it has a purpose. I'm saying in particular. The next circle is your unconscious. So that's the intuitive side of you. That's your, let me put it this way. The stats, if you were to look it up, and scientists have discovered this, don't ask me how they measured it, but they calculated that the brain processes something like 50 bits of information per second.
Oh, yeah.
The unconscious processes 11 million bits per second. So like, do we want to be operating from our brain, or do we want to be operating from the unconscious? The answer is no, we want to operate from the unconscious. So think of the unconscious as being that intuitive side of you. And then you've got the superconscious. That's the third circle. Mm. So the pendulum, and the reason why I use the analogy of the pendulum is that you can refer the pendulum, or you can apply the pendulum to pretty much every single aspect of life, meaning on a macro level as well as on a micro level. So on a macro level, you can look at politics. One politician gets in and the opposite gets in the next time, and so on. So there's swings in that pendulum, both in politics, in countries, in every macro concept that operates on the earth. On a micro level, and you can also take it again from nature in terms of the different seasons, the different times, night and day, and so on. So that pendulum represents the opposites and the swing in between the two opposites. But also on a micro level, it actually applies for every single thing within ourselves. So when fear comes up, that fear is feedback for ourselves that we're attached to something. Meaning, once we're attached, that pendulum is no longer in equilibrium. It's now swung to either side. And that's what the fear is trying to tell us to. Now, when you're in equilibrium, you're not attached. That's equilibrium. That's your pendulum being straight. And if you can imagine, and the reason why I'm asking you to visualize the pendulum, now you've got a direct connection and an objective connection and a love connection between your executive center, your unconscious, and the superconscious. So most people are out of equilibrium. So therefore, for them to interpret and to understand the difference between, is this fear from, let's just call it personality, as in the person themselves, or is it coming from the unconscious? A lot of people don't actually work, they don't work from the executive center, but secondly, they don't do anything in order to improve that connection with their unconscious, and ultimately then with the superconscious. And different things, even from the perspective of, most people may have heard about meditation, and they've heard about all the benefits of meditation, but they don't do meditation. So pretty much I can't say for certain, but I'm going to say 99% of my clients do meditation.
Wow. And
that's partly because I'm bringing them through it, and I'm asking them to do meditation. All I can do is I can encourage my clients. I don't force them to do anything. It's their free will at the end of the day. But meditation is one of the things that they end up eventually doing. And once they do it and get the experiences from it and that connection with the unconscious, they will never give it up. Never.
Wow.
So when I talk about, okay, so how can you make that differentiator between what's fear from you or what's fear from an unconscious, from a guidance perspective. Meditation is one of those practices. It's like practicing a muscle.
Mm. So do your clients, because I meditate every day, do your clients, the ones that never meditated, and when they start meditating, do they see changes in their life and the results that they're getting in their business?
Yeah. Yeah. It's not instant, because it takes a while for them to, how to say, to practice the meditation in order to actually get to true meditation. So when I talk to my clients and tell them for the first, literally it could be for the first few months, they're not really going to get a huge amount out of meditation from an unconscious perspective. They'll get it from relieving stress, and a lot of the anxieties are being afforded a time to bubble up to the surface. Yeah. So they'll get benefits from that perspective. But to really get guidance from your unconscious, that will take a few months, because we've got to remove a whole load of other stuff in relation to, their ego, what they're attached to. There's a whole load of different stuff, which is where I bring clients through on the executive code in order to maintain them and being in equilibrium.
They got to let go of a lot of bowling balls. That's how I always looked at it.
I love that phrase. I love that phrase.
Everybody's carrying around a backpack full of bowling balls.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna switch gears a little bit. This conversation is like fascinating. And it really, like, as you're talking, you can see like the people who are truly successful and truly happy, you can see how potentially like they're tapping into this unconscious part of their brain. So yeah. Wow. This is fascinating. This is like, I love this stuff. So I'm going to switch gears a little. You have a huge, from what I've read and from what I've learned about you, you believe a lot in giving back, and you've done some work over in Cambodia and Kenya. So let's talk about that for a little bit.
Okay. Hey, I wasn't expecting to go there. That's okay. It emphasizes that we don't pre-discuss these conversations. So for your podcast listeners, which is the flow I love to go. So because it's whatever comes up. I for quite a number of years. So let me put it this way: going back to 2011 was a big moment in my life, because it was when my first brother passed away. And it was a very big shock. I was there when he passed away. He came out of surgery. Oh, wow. I was there in the moment when the surgeon spoke to me, and literally he only had a few hours to go from the moment that I was told. And up until that point, I led my whole life from the perspective of not wanting to be here. I just wanted out.
Wow.
So I had planned, I attempted, I contemplated so many times on just checking out, but nobody ever knew. And here was my first brother, Eugene, and in that moment, and the realization in the days that followed was, here was my brother trying desperately to hang on to life. But here was me trying to check out. So up until that point, it was me trying to find, there was one aspect to me wanting not to be here, which was trying to find purpose. And hence the reason why I'd read all the books, I'd done all the courses, gone to so many different gurus all around the world and all that kinds of things, and I still couldn't find my purpose for me. So that's when I started to go inwardly and reflect, and it was from that then I had the epiphany moment. But in those following years, I ran a charity organization. I was involved in over 100 different charities. I was raising money for them and all that kinds of things. So I got involved in a lot of worthy causes and charity projects. And it was part of that process, in the sense, I was trying to come to terms or understand life in the bigger perspective. Hence the reason why, I got involved in funding projects in Cambodia, in Kenya. The times that I spent in Cambodia and Kenya were absolutely phenomenal, because it's, and I would say this to anybody that goes to visit these projects. never, ever, ever go with the mindset that you can teach them. They have so much to teach us.
Mm.
So I went with an open mindset from the perspective of what could I learn from anybody that I met in these, because you're talking about really, really tough circumstances for people that, you know, literally don't have fresh running water. If they have food, they're lucky to have food. You know, for some of the girls, we went to one place in Cambodia where it's an organization called Free to Shine, and the girls are trying to be protected by the organization Free to Shine from being trafficked into the sex trafficking industry. And these are young little girls, and literally been taken away from their families for the whole purpose of to put them into trafficking. And there's one phenomenal thing, sorry, two probably things that I got from literally everybody that I came across in both Cambodia and Kenya was they have an absolute zest for life, and literally they've nothing in comparison to what most people would have in the Western world, if that makes sense. And they're so happy. I mean, like, they are, no matter what their circumstances, they are so phenomenally happy. But not only that, I remember speaking with one guy in Sote was his name in Cambodia, and he worked in a fair circus. And so, you know, these would go all around and they would put on shows, circus shows and so on.
Yeah.
And I had a conversation with him, and I got to know a little bit about him, what he was doing. And his brother was in, what's the circus in Vegas?
Oh, Cirque du Soleil.
Cirque du Soleil, yeah. So his brother managed to get into Cirque du Soleil. So that's how professional these guys were. And so he's bringing me through his training routine and this, that, and the other, and so on. Young guy, and I said, so like, what do you do in the evening time, or what do you do for kind of relaxing? Because you seem to kind of have your full day just on training and so on. And he said, yeah, in the evening time I have a school. And I said, what do you mean you have a school? He said, I bring little kids around that are in my village, and I teach them how to do the different circus acts, and I teach them English, and I teach them a whole load of different things, because if I teach them, well, then they have a step up compared to when I started off. So he was giving up every single evening time in order to help the kids in his local community. So I saw this time and time again, in the sense of, so what I'm saying, like, they're so happy, and yet they've nothing in the world in comparable terms to the Western world, and they still want to give. And it was just phenomenal to witness. So they're the most precious times that I have in my whole life, is connecting with those individuals. It was absolutely so much that I learned from each one of them. And then unfortunately, because, you know, in recent years with COVID and so on, we haven't been able to travel. So I haven't managed to get back to different projects and so on.
Yeah. Well, once we get through this whole thing with COVID, I know we were talking about, like, you know, the cases over in Ireland and the cases here and stuff, but I want to just also say, you know, thank you so much for the courage and being vulnerable, and, you know, telling your story, you know, as with your brother. And I'm so sorry to hear that. And then, you know, your story and how you know, ended up doing this charitable work. I mean, I'm big on giving back, and, you know, and helping others, and, you know, I mean, I'm big with the rescue organizations for pets, and for dogs and cats, and, you know, but I read that part of your story, not knowing the other part of it. But the one thing I will say is, everything, and I know you know this, but everything that we go through is leading us to, like, where we, like, that our truest self, I guess you could say, the good, the bad, and the really ugly, you know. And I've been through that myself. My best friend and my business partner actually passed away in February. And that was probably like the hardest, besides my grandparents passing away, that was one that it's been the hardest thing for me to get through. She passed away from pancreatic cancer. And in 2018, I remember going through kind of a dip myself, and here she is fighting for her life. And, you know, and I remember having a conversation with her, and she said to me, she said, Theresa, she said, your purpose is to be you. She said, your purpose is to be exactly who you are. It's not about what you do. She's like, you need to be you. And I remember, you know, and like I said, she passed, and it kind of happened, you know, very suddenly. But when she died, I felt like a part of me died.
Yeah.
But I also felt like a part of me broke open. And it was that part of me that's actually her. So she was super like, and she was super very much into, which is why I wanted to ask you about it. Very into, like, she wanted to save the world. And she was very big on helping kids, like underprivileged kids who don't have access to education or technology, like helping them to have access to it in this country or, you know, outside of this country. So, but thank you. I just wanted to just say, oh, sending you so much love and light, like, for sharing your story. I mean, that's like, I mean, there's so many people out there that go through things like that and do it in silence, you know? Yeah.
And that isolation or that feeling of loneliness is huge.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's not easy for anybody having to go through that.
But the fact that you did, and kind of going through all of this, allows you to be like an even better like coach and help all these people. So
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. So I always ask people, I mean, this, like I said, this conversation, I am so glad that I met you. You are an amazing, amazing person. I mean, this has just been, I have so many notes that I took. But I mean, this has just been an amazing conversation. And I mean, you are fascinating. So, I mean, the executive code, like that, I wrote notes down and everything, and I'm like evaluating it in my own head, you know, just so many, and genius you, and the questions to ask that you need to ask yourself. I mean, this has just been a phenomenal conversation. And I know that this is going to be able to help a lot of listeners, a lot of my listeners out there, and even people that you work with, you know. So thank you so very much. So I have 3 questions that I like to ask people at the end of the podcast interview. So the first one is, what has been your biggest lesson that you've learned as a business owner, as an entrepreneur?
Oh, the biggest lesson. I'm going to answer this in kind of same answer. We'll cover both aspects, which is find out what they want and just give them what they want, as in your customers. Yeah.
Nice.
It's funny. I was asked to write. I co-authored a book with 61 other entrepreneurs around the world, and the question we were asked was, "What's the advice we would give our grandchildren to build a better business, a better life, and a better world?" And my answer to it was to make a difference. So if you look at your business, what's the difference you're making? And but what I'm trying to say that is, don't look at it from your perspective. And the more I think about it, in answer to your question, the most important thing when it comes to any individual, and I'm going to speak from a soul level perspective. The most important thing from a soul level perspective is your intention. So if you go into business with the intention of what's the difference that you can make for your customers, you've got to see it from your customer's perspective, first of all, and then start there, and then your business will grow exponentially.
Wow. Okay, so you answered my second question, which is what advice to give to your youngest self. See?
What was your second question?
We're connected.
Absolutely.
All right, question number 3.
Okay.
What are you most grateful for?
Oh my God, everything.
Everything. I love that.
I to get to do what I do every day is just phenomenal. To see the difference in clients, to see their potential, see the images and the knowings that they get from them. It's just phenomenal to see the impact on what they're doing for their people and so on, as in the clients and the customers that they're to serve. Just everything in my life, absolutely everything in my life. Yeah, without a shadow of a doubt.
I love that. Love that. One more quick question. Tell me about your rescue dog.
Mocha is her name. She's now probably just coming up to 3 years old. She's 18 months when we got her. So we got her during the pandemic as well. And how we got her was that, so my sister-in-law is a dog trainer, and she's also attached to the rescue center for dogs. So she said, look, there's this big dog that's after coming into our charity, the center. She's a huge dog, and she's going to be really, really difficult to rehome, because she's a cross between a collie and a German Shepherd, and she's quite wild or hyper, if you want to call it that way. And she's been with a family of young kids in a small house, and being a German Shepherd, she needs a lot of exercise and she needs a lot of space. And the family, she's grown too big now to look after her. And when we got her, she wouldn't let us pet her.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So even so, she lives in the house with us, and so when she came into the house, she'd circle going around the kitchen, the living area, literally constantly, and that was a sign that she was distressed. But over time, slowly, we just dealt with her gently, just made sure that she, let her know that she was okay and so on. She is the most loving dog I have ever come across. I didn't necessarily want another dog in the house, but honestly, she seemed, I have 2 adult boys, seeing the love that they have for Mocha, which is her name, and the love that Mocha gives back. Every time you walk into the room, she grabs her toy, she comes over the toy, she wants you to play with her and the toy. She is just a phenomenal. So during COVID, she saved us, albeit that we saved her. She's just an absolutely phenomenal dog. She's lovely.
Yeah. That's how my husband and I feel. We rescued sister puppies. Because we saw the one, and then they're like, oh, she has a sister. And my husband was like, there's no way we can just rescue one and not the other. So we have 2. But it was, I mean, they, as much as we rescued them, they rescued us. They taught us how to slow down and really, like, as my husband said, they like to smell the flowers. We need to smell the flowers more.
Yeah. Oh, we can learn so much from them, I have to say.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining me and for this conversation. I mean, oh my word, there's been so many insights here. And again, thank you so much for sharing your story, because you sharing your story, as I said, is going to help so many people, because there's people out there that can totally, relate to that. I mean, everything. Plus, you're also, like, you taught us so much today. So, and the insights that you gave today, I think now more than ever, because of the pandemic, people need to hear this, because so many people, business owners and stuff, are struggling with, being on the brink of closing, and, how do I get through this? So I just want to say thank you, so very much for sharing all of your insights. So
thank you for giving me the opportunity to share, honestly, because it's for me, it's about, I'm on a mission. I am absolutely on a mission. So it gives me the opportunity to share a message that hopefully will help people.
Awesome. Awesome. So tell my listeners where they can find you.
The easiest is they can go to my website, which is paulwilliamdavis.com.
Okay.
All the links are on my website. So there's free downloads. I have a community that's not on social media. People love the fact that it's not on social media. It's called the Executive Code Community as well. The link is within the website.
Okay.
And I have a podcast called the Executive Code as well. So if people want to find out more information or understand our insights of how I share and so on, people love the podcast, so if they want to listen to that as well, yeah, absolutely.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
The executive code, right?
That's it.
Awesome. Yeah. Awesome. And we will put these links in the show notes so people can get access to them. So if you didn't write that down while you're listening, go to the show notes, because you'll be able to click on it and go right to his website and check it out, and to your podcast. So obviously you're on iTunes and everywhere there's podcasts, right? Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much. And thank you everybody for listening, and I will see you next week.
Thanks so much, Theresa.